Hello everyone, my name is Gidi. Welcome to my new YouTube channel. So this channel, I have decided to make it a channel that describes international geopolitics to Africans because I have been following international geopolitics for a very long time now, probably around 12, 13 years. So a lot of people I have talked to do not understand international geopolitics and how it affects their lives as Nigerians or Africans. So I have decided to create this YouTube channel to sort of educate Africans on international geopolitics and how it affects them, how they should position themselves and get their governments to position them in the international stage. So, what is geopolitics? Geopolitics is the study of geography, politics, and international relations. I define it as the study of how countries interact with each other to achieve their means, both good, bad, and ugly. And why does it matter to Africans what international geopolitics is? It matters to Africans because decisions are being made far from you that affect your life. They affect your country, they affect the things that happen, they affect your fuel prices, they affect your food prices. Countries can be quarreling in different parts of the world and you are having issues with food prices, or you're having issues with oil prices, or you're having issues with petroleum, stuff like that. Even good too, countries can decide that, oh, they want to compete on your land, and because of that competition they invest a lot of resources into your country and stuff like that. So it can work both good and it can work for bad. They can even fight wars in your country just because they have issues with each other. So you need to understand how these things happen so that you can better position yourselves in a way to take advantage of it and mitigate whatever kinds of issues that can occur. So my first topic today is global geopolitics. I want to give you guys a breakdown of key major powers in the world currently and other emerging powers, and I want to show you guys the different blocks that currently exist in the world today. So the first set of major powers are the ones a lot of people already know: the United States of America, China, Russia, the EU. Then there are emerging global powers like India, Brazil, Indonesia, and some other countries. There are also regional geopolitical blocks. Regional geopolitical blocks include stuff like the West, which is usually made up of America, Canada, the EU, Australia, New Zealand, and yeah, generally those ones. That is, those are what we consider the West. Then there's the BRICS countries like China, Russia, India, South Africa, Brazil. Maybe in future videos I can describe to you what BRICS are and why they are important. There's also the Middle Eastern bloc. The Middle Eastern bloc is sort of divided between the Arab states and the Iranian bloc, like their spheres of influence, both the Arab sphere of influence and the Iranian sphere of influence. So we can now talk about the minor players in the world. The minor players are usually the African bloc, which is usually mainly the AU. I think the AU is the main African bloc that handles the relations with the rest of the world or for Africa. It is a very, like I said, it's a very minor bloc. It doesn't really do that much. It's probably, I would call it a toothless organization, but well, at least it's there. Then there are the minor ones too, like the ECOWAS and all the different regional blocs in Africa, and I'm sure they have some amount of relationships with each other, but it's still quite on a very minor scale. They don't get to push influence around the world most of the time. So there's also now the Latin American bloc, the Latin American countries on their own together. They too are also seen as minor players. There are also countries with loose alignments. They either do non-alignment, like they are willing to partner and trade with different countries in like they don't really have any kind of They try not to tie themselves to any particular bloc. They just want to be neutral and interact with all blocks at equal levels. The next question that I would like to tackle now is, where do Africans actually align when it comes to the general major powers? So the way I decided to define this is economics, military, and soft power. So in terms of economics, African countries have very, very, very strong ties with China, and China invests a huge amount of money in African countries. China is the largest trading partner for more than 40 African countries, and we have a trade volume of above $300 billion with China alone. They've invested several amounts of billions and billions of dollars in different African countries, from the Ethiopian dam to the Abuja, or sure, to the entire, to most of the modern rail networks of Nigeria, currently built with Chinese funding and Chinese know-how and a lot of Chinese stuff. China is very big in infrastructure development in Africa. The EU is Africa's second largest trading partner. They too are quite invested and big on the African continent. The trade volume between the EU and Africa is around $300 billion. I could break it down later what the trade is, but the trade is not necessarily very good trade, because it's a whole lot of us exporting raw materials to them and they turning it into finished goods and selling it back to us. So it's not really good, but it's chat trade. People do make money from it. Then the third largest trading partner for Africa is the United States, with around $60 billion of general trade that happens. So you can see the difference between 300 billion for both China and EU and the 60 billion of US is 5 times more, much more. So the second relationship between Africa and the major powers is in terms of military. So military presence could be defined in different ways. You could define it as the number of military bases that countries have, or different countries in Africa, and you could also define it as the level of military activities those countries engage in Africa. And you can also define it in terms of weapon sales, like which countries, because the thing with a lot of countries, especially maybe like the Western Bloc, is that they don't sell weapons to people they do not they see as potential. Well, nobody sells weapons to people they see as potential enemies, but they do not sell weapons to people that do not align with their so-called values, like they always like to talk about. If the West sort of decides to sell weapons, especially America, Germany, UK, those are the three major weapons manufacturers in the West. So if they decide to sell weapons to you, then they sort of impose some restrictions in terms of what you can do with those weapons, and it's sort of like a relationship. It's not just the sell weapons you and go, it's like a relationship. You are expected to uphold some certain kinds of value systems, and you are expected to have some certain kinds of requirements. Maybe we could go into those types of things later. So in terms of military presence, I see military presence as the number of bases that each one of these major powers have on the continent. So the country with the highest number of military bases in Africa is the United States of America, with over 30 military bases scattered around the continent. They have the largest number of military bases in different countries on the continent. So France followed next with about 15 military bases in mostly the Francophone countries. Then China has 1 military base in Djibouti. UK has 3 military bases in different countries in Africa, and Russia so far has around 4. Russia is sort of like a newer player in the military presence in Africa. They've been selling weapons to Africans for a very long time, but they are sort of starting to creep in slowly in the whole military presence aspect now. In terms of weapons sales to African countries, Russia is actually the largest seller of weapons to Africans, followed by, funny enough, China and third, the US. The top thing now is military activities. Which countries have the highest military activities in Africa? By military activities, I mean the soldiers that they have in the country. What kinds of operations do they engage in? Like in the Sahel region now, where there's a lot of terrorist activities and a lot of militia activities. The countries that go there to try to stop those things, like France, and maybe like the issues that go on in Somalia and the issues that go on in Democratic Republic of Congo, all those different hotspots on the continent now. The major powers that have influences in those regions. So the number one country with the largest military presence in Africa in terms of activities is the United States of America, followed by France. Then Russia is currently ramping up their military activities in Africa too, with regards to like the Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso activities that were going on in recent years regarding the pursuing of US soldiers from their bases in Niger. And I remember at that time you would see different videos of Russian flags flying in the air, Russian mercenaries in those countries they are trying to sort of push out America from those countries and sort of develop more relationships with them. We could also break that down later because that is also very interesting. That region, the whole Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger relationship might actually be one of the future shapers of relationships between West African countries. It's very interesting. We need to talk about that later. So the next thing I'd like to talk about now is soft power. So soft power is relationships, like diplomacy, stuff like movies, stuff like just general how people perceive those countries. Exactly, that is what you could define soft power is, like how people perceive those countries. So we already know that the United States of America is the number one when it comes to soft power in Africa. They are the most known. Their Hollywood movies, we all watch them and stuff like that. So they have the most, when I say the most favorable rating in Africa. Then we don't really have that much other players. The rest of the players tend to be smaller players, maybe like France, because France is big with the Anglophone countries. So they have decent amount of soft power too. China is sort of trying to improve its soft power. They used to have a decent amount of soft power when we were younger, but they sort of toned that down. I don't know why, but they seem to be trying to ramp up their soft power again in the world right now. So you might think that, okay, yes, though the voices of African countries is quite small, but they're actually doing some things. Like if you remember recently, South Africa led the ICJ inquest into the Israelis' actions in Palestine. They were the ones that championed the court case against Israel for pretty much the whole world. Different countries backed them. So that is one of the ways in which African countries are sort of showing themselves on the world stage. Then there's also talk about creating a permanent seat for African representatives in the UN Security Council. So those are soft or small pushes that some of the African countries are currently trying to exert on the world. Like I said, they are very small, and it's not good that they are very small. There needs to be a huge, because we are like 1.3 trillion people on this continent with about 54 plus countries. It's not correct that we have such a very low voice in the world. It does not make any kind of sense. So we would spend a lot of time on this channel analyzing why, analyzing what can be done to change that, and helping us see where we are, and especially helping us understand what our interests are. For me, that is the keyest thing about this channel, understanding what our interests are. It is very important that we do not go and support nations that are actively trying to sabotage our own interests, not even passively, actively. So we need to understand these things and understand how to play the game. Because at the end of the day, international geopolitics is a game. It is legit a game. It's just like Game of Thrones. The only problem is that if you lose, you die, or they conquer you, or they rout you, or they impose horrible trade balances on you. Then if you win, you get to do as much of what you like as you like. It's quite an important game to play. So this channel is going to be mostly about these things, talking about international geopolitics. So I urge you to hopefully like and subscribe so that you can get more information as I post them out. I'll be trying to post videos at least once every week, and hopefully as time goes on, improve the quality of the channel. Thank you very much and have a good day.